Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Get to Know here on the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. You're going to love this guy, Ryan Pote. Ryan, welcome.
How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you here. Yeah, I'm fascinated by your military career, which is just, you've worn a lot of hats and done a lot of cool stuff. So how did you get into the military? What drew you there? And give us a little thumbnail about what all you've done.
Sure. I'll try and keep it brief too, so keep me on the rails. But
Okay. Yeah.
I always I grew up, like many kids of the 80s, I saw Top Gun and it would just resonated with me, and it was the only thing that I was drawn to. Just wanted to fly planes, and I found out you could do it for the military, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So I was pretty much focused on that. Um, but there's a lot of different ways to get there. And, I almost went to the Air Force Academy, and I decided I wanted to go to Hawaii because I had this little adventurous bug that I just wanted. So I'd never been out of New England, never been on an airplane. But I went to Hawaii with just, a backpack and a one-way ticket and made a way for myself out there. I became a scuba instructor and a bartender and a bunch of other jobs. But the scuba thing really kind of took over for me. I kind of found out who I was, and, really loved the adventure of it. And then I ended up joining the Navy, became a pilot in the Navy, chose selected helicopters, became an H-60 Bravo pilot, which, for people who don't know what the Bravo is, it's kind of the Navy's version of a Black Hawk. And if you've seen the movie Tears of the Sun,
Hmm.
it's they fly the Bravo the SEALs fly on the Bravo in that movie. So I was trained as a sub hunter, and then but I got pigeonholed and selected for a lesser known special operations mission doing counter narcotics with Joint Interagency Task Force South. So they chose our helicopter because we had a very robust radar. We've been doing it since the 80s. And the radar kind of helps us pick out these drug smuggling boats off the coast or upriver and things like that, and then the drug subs as well. So we got kind of pigeonholed into that mission over the years, and I was, selected to do that. So once you do it, you get all the training to become like a law enforcement, international waters interdiction officer. So you kind of get pigeonholed into it. So I did 3 deployments for that to the South Pacific off of frigates, working with DEA, FBI, Panamanians, Guatemalans, Nicaraguans, Colombians, some other partner nations, and um, yeah. So while everyone was focused on the war in the Middle East, we were constantly just trying to restrict, and I say restrict, the flow of drugs into the United States because
Right.
it's an ocean the size of the United States, and we didn't really get a lot of assets. So we were very busy, but we only stop about 4% of what comes into the United States.
Sure.
So, but we also don't just interdict drugs. So we interdict um, weapons and arms transfers. We interdict. They kind of changed the name. It used to be counter drug, and then they call it counter transnational organized crime because the drug cartels don't just
Right.
do drugs anymore. They diversify, just like anyone's good portfolio.
Exactly.
So,
Cash,
you
people,
know,
you name it. Yeah.
people, timber, wood, like that's a very rare, unknown thing that they traffic in. Limes and avocados, another big one. So yeah, it's a lot of different things. So we were very busy, and it was a very fun mission. I got injured, and I got separated from the Navy in 2020, and I didn't really know what to do with myself. I couldn't fly anymore for the FAA even. So all my kind of career prospects after 12 years in the Navy were kind of washed up. So I was kind of, a man without a plan and feeling really dissatisfied with the job I fell in. I was an investigator for the DoD, but it just wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I was dealing with some PTSD. And I saw a therapist. I told my wife I would go see it because I was kind of in denial about it. And then they said I should start journaling my experiences in the morning before work, that it would be a cathartic exercise. So I had never written before. I never wanted to be a writer, anything. I read a lot. I read a ton growing up, fiction, nonfiction. I was a history major and got my master's in history. So I was, good at writing papers and stuff, but I was never a fiction person. It wasn't even on my radar. Um, so I was doing these journals, and then the therapist wanted me to share them in a group setting, like talking about them, because I was having like these panic attacks and things about and I couldn't even really pinpoint what the source of it was. So she really helped me figure that out. And when I discussed them in a group setting, I didn't feel comfortable talking about drug cartel operations and things. I had just, it was so fresh. It needed kind of a cool off period before I felt comfortable. And I had really gone into detail. So she was like, just fictionalize everything. Just, change the person's, places, things. You can basically just be anonymous. What we want is the emotions, the feelings of the events, what you thought was going to happen, when you were going to die here or there. And so I did that, and so I essentially was writing little fiction short stories, and it started working. It started working so well that I didn't need the therapist anymore. I just needed this new mission every morning was to write these stories, and um, and then it turned into I got inspired to try and put it towards something because I don't like to just waste my effort. Um, and I was like, well, maybe I could write a book. So I wrote a book in secret from my wife. I wrote another book in secret, and then I started kind of sharing them with my wife and my brother, and asked if this was something I could dedicate myself to and really give it a shot because I realized at that point how much effort went into honing the craft of writing. And I knew it was going to take everything if I was going to go for it. So I asked if I had kind of some kind of raw talent that they would be completely honest with me. My brother told me to keep going. My wife was kind of making fun of me about it at first until she read them, and then she gave me that look that which is go for it. So
Yeah.
my world got real small. I cut out all my hobbies. If it wasn't work, family, or taking care of myself, it was 100% devoted to writing, getting better at writing, honing my craft. I wrote 5 novels. I had agents. I had momentum and then lost it. I had some, contests that I won and lost it. I got over 400 rejections before I stopped counting.
Hmm.
Fully gave up writing. And then literally right after I gave up, truly gave it up, and was going to just self-publish everything just to make back my money. That's when everything started happening for me. And now I'm here.
That's how it works.
That's how it works.
That's how it works. When you quit paying attention, suddenly something happens. You know.
Yeah.
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 Wow, what a story. So you didn't even though you read a lot, you never thought about writing until all
No.
this happened, and then now you had a reason to. And so for you, it was
Yeah.
therapy. And so you wrote
Mhm.
5 books. Blood and Treasure was number 5, I assume.
It was
Uh,
number 4,
number
and
4.
it was the third in a series. So
Okay.
yeah,
And that's the one that got published.
this is the one that got published. Yep. And then at this point, the other ones are probably coming down the pipe now too. So that's just
Uh,
kind of how it happens.
yeah, it often happens that way, actually. It, I think, Dean Koontz, Stephen King, some of the big names in the thing, they wrote a ton of books before they ever sold anything.
Yep.
And then when they finally sold it, the question was, do you have anything else? Oh, well, since you ask, let me
Yeah.
open this little box sitting in the corner.
Yeah, it's that thing where nobody, I always relate it, Stephen King has, nobody, he couldn't sell Carrie.
No,
And but a lot of authors have that, like Dan Brown. I read a lot of his books growing up. When the
exactly.
Da Vinci Code came out, a lot of people think that was his first book.
Yeah,
Deception Point, Digital Fortress were out long before
right.
he was, and they're bestsellers now too, right? It's
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Well,
I
Michael
mean,
Crichton was the same way. He wrote Five Patients, I think, even The Great
yep,
Train Robbery, all that
yeah,
before Andromeda's Strain, and then it went on from there. But yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's the way it works. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about Blood and Treasure. I'm assuming that
still love that cover.
yeah, yeah, I do love this cover. I do love this cover. Obviously, your military experience and training and events there play a huge part of this book. And I see you got Mark Greeny with a blurb there. That's fantastic because Mark writes good, good, good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, how did this story come about? What was the nidus for it, and how did you incorporate all your stuff into it?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely. tried to weave in some of my military experience into all the books, because that's kind of where,
Sure.
because I got into writing dealing with my own kind of issues. So the character is kind of like my um, the progression of my
Hmm.
personal therapy, right? So,
Right.
weaving some of that in was natural. It also was a way to bring some authenticity to the reader, so that I can kind of um, use that as a wall to lean on when I want to fictionalize some other things. So, there's some writer's craft kind of built into why I use that a little bit of the time, because it's not like a straight military thriller, and
Right.
that's where the publisher has kind of problems putting it on the shelf, because it's a crossover, and it kind of takes elements from different kinds of things. But
Yes, it
um,
does.
this this book, I had the idea for this book when I very first started to write, and but I didn't think that I was good enough to do it because of what I wanted it to be. I knew what I wanted it to be. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea how to do that. So I took a bunch of writing classes online, kind of like what you guys are doing, but I took like master class and stuff like that. This wasn't around, or maybe it was, but I hadn't found it yet. So, and everyone, the what everyone said was to like write what you know. And I was like, okay, so I, did drug cartels, a lot of South America, Central America. So those are places I've been. I'll write this character, Ethan Kane, and I'll put him in the world that I came from, and that's where I'll write. So I did that, and it was great. Like, the first two books are very similar to this and this character. Um, but this particular book, I had this idea for this. I wanted to do something big with the space station. Not a lot of people have touched the space station because there's so much to research in the station. But I kind of had this story idea where you wouldn't need, as the way it was told, you wouldn't need to like be an astronaut to tell it. That you could kind of get by with just enough research and still make it feel real. Um, but I had this idea with this astronaut from space who, crashes after, destroying the space station, and for the, reasons that you'll learn in the book. Um, but that you didn't, so that the character throughout the book would vacillate between good and evil, and that in a believable way, but to the extremes, and to the point where the reader gives up guessing by the end of the book. And that by the end of the book, when you finally find out what they are and why, it's inevitable, satisfying, but at the same time needs to make everything that person did make sense in that new context.
Mhm.
So I had that idea. I needed to practice. So I wrote 3 books before this, before I felt, okay, I think I know how to do this now. And then I built the DNA of the story around that character. And that character in the book is named Mojda Zehati, and she's the fallen astronaut from space.
Well, that's a great lesson, I think, for all the writers out there, is that certain stories have to be written at certain times.
Mm.
Complex stories with a lot of things. If that's not going to be your first book, because you don't have the chops and you haven't had the experience, and it takes time. And
Yep.
we talked about this. How many authors wrote a bunch of books before they ever got anything published?
Yes.
Obviously, the publishing world's changing, and everybody puts everything out there now,
Yeah.
often to their detriment and to the detriment of books. But some good stuff comes out of that, and God bless if that's what you want, do it. But that's a
Yep.
great lesson to learn, is that I wasn't ready for this. And I think to tell yourself that is very introspective and very adult, if you will. And
Well, you know, I think it comes from my, like, coming from being a pilot in the Navy.
right,
Pilots get this rap in the Navy that they're this big ego people because you have to be really confident. But in all reality, like, we live and die by the mistakes that we make and that other
right,
people make, and you have to face them, learn from them, tell them to everybody, and then grow and move on to the next
right,
thing. So, writing was no different for me. It was my new mission, and I was very comfortable like trying to learn it. I knew, just like flying, that there's so much that I don't know about the craft. And
right.
having been a reader my whole life, I knew. I think Hemingway called it like good shit detector or something like that. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I felt like I had that from reading, and I just didn't know how to do it. So as I
Right.
learned more, I would go back and edit the first ones, and then learn the craft, and then it was when I learned how to really edit my work that I think I something changed. Between the second and third book, there was a change in me as a writer, and it was like a 180-degree turn. Um, and then I wrote a third book, and I tried some different things, and after that was when I said, okay, I know the techniques and the tools that I need to, and I wasn't quite there yet. It was like
Right.
I knew what I needed, but this book helped level me up at the same time.
Yeah. It's you learn that lesson that when you become a writer, you don't read for pleasure anymore.
No, it
You
ruins
end
it.
up you're
Nobody
reading
told me
people's
that it was
stuff.
going to ruin it.
Exactly. It takes all the pleasure out of it because it becomes a textbook of either what to do or what not to do. And you end up reading a paragraph and you stop and say, "Well, I wouldn't have written it that way." And you think about how you would have written it, and then you say, "Okay, I better get back to this story." Happens all the time. Been doing it for decades, and it's yeah, I think it's part of the writing process. But again, that's how you learn. You
Hmm.
learn by apprentice. You learn from other people, whether it's flying a helicopter or for me, practicing medicine. You learn from people who know more than you, who have more experience. Well, you learn writing by reading
Right.
more
Yep.
than anything
And
else,
and you're never going to be ready
ever.
when you want to try that new thing out. You're never That's why you're trying it out. It's new. You've never done it before, so you have to try it. You have to keep trying. That's why I love, you mentioned Mark Graney. He was kind of a very big inspiration in terms of his path as a writer, because he always talks about how he tries something new with every book.
Hmm.
And I thought that was very important to
Yes.
do, to learn a craft, is to
You got
just
to keep
push
expanding
yourself.
and you got to keep
Yeah,
learning.
exactly.
Absolutely. So what's
Yep.
your process? I mean, are you an outliner or a pantser or somewhere in between or, everybody has their different way of writing a book actually. How
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if this was the only book I'd ever written, I'd probably keep my mouth shut. But since I've written quite a bit, and a lot more now, even after this is published, I'm comfortable to say that my process is a blend, because I still have a full-time job, so I'm not. You interview writers who do this full time, their process is probably
yeah.
a little bit different. So I work from 8 to 5 every single day, and I got little kids, and I got a wife who is my best friend. So and I mow the lawn and all that stuff. So I had to make my process work with my life,
Yep.
or I was never going to get past the second book.
Exactly.
um, so I had to streamline it. So I write before work, Monday through Friday, 4 to 7 in the morning. I'm an early riser. I always have been. So that's my window to write. I don't write on the weekends. Those are time with family, time to let my brain process. I'm a big believer that the subconscious does a lot more work than the
Yes.
conscious mind. So
And you're really
um,
writing all the time. It's like Stephen King's wife said when she came up into his room, which is above their garage. He had his little
yeah,
place where he wrote, and he would be sitting there with his feet propped up, staring out the window. She didn't bother him because she knew he was writing.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
And and everybody's process is going to be different, but I needed to make sure it worked with my life, because I knew I wasn't going to get published on my first book, and I knew
right.
it was going to be. I gave myself 5 years, and ironically, when this book published, it was 5 years to the month when I'd made that
Wow.
kind of deal with myself. But um, I said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot in 5 years, and let's go. But I knew that I was going to burn out if I did it every single
Hmm.
day, and burnout's a real thing, and it's very easy to happen. And this is a marathon, right? Writing is a marathon. In anything. I write very fast though, so I put out a rough draft in under a month for
Ah,
my book. So um, but I think a little bit of that comes from my process, because I had to become efficient at it, and I didn't have time to sit around. So it's funny, like I say, I didn't have time. I wasn't on a deadline. The best deadline is a self-imposed deadline. Okay,
right.
that I learned that as a Navy pilot, that you need to be your own driver of your time, or the worst place you can be is when someone else needs you to do something, versus your mind is so much more engaged when you are driving yourself forward. So um, so I'll think of an idea, and I'll let that cook in my head for a really long time, and I'll just subconsciously be picking up little ideas or headlines, or until the pieces fit for the kind of, like, I can kind of tell when there's a hole in the story. And, like, for Blood and Treasure, there's a lot of pieces and elements to it. And my books are not formulaic, but they each have there's elements that have to lock together. And once I have all those elements kind of locked together in my head, I'm like, okay, I kind of have an idea for a story now. And but it's been cooking. The tone that I want to set, the kind of underlying themes are already kind of there in my mind. So then I'll sit down and I'll kind of blow those up a little bit, and then I'll kind of get a working idea, and then I put together research. And I don't research, I put together research. So like coming from a history background, like when I got my master's in history, the way you write a historiographical essay or a book or something like that is you go out and you find all the research that you're going to need, because history is endless and you could
Right.
read forever. So you have to have a hypothesis first, and then you go find the research that's going to serve that hypothesis, and then you dive into that research based on what you're going to write about. So my concept for my story is my hypothesis. Will this work? And then I do headline research, what I call surface research, where I fill in the holes and make sure the plot connects and the logic connects. And then I write an outline, and then I outline the whole story from beginning to end. I don't flesh it out very much. It's just, some chapters have a lot of dialogue because it's in my head. Some chapters are just like he gets away, or like,
Right.
but
Exactly.
they have to have a purpose. It has to serve the story. So
Right.
it's very efficient in the sense there's no chapter is unnecessarily there from the very beginning. And then once I've got the outline, and I know the logic of the story works with the twists and everything, then I go into the research to flesh out the story a little bit more and give it some meat. But that whole process takes about 3 to 4 weeks, because I
Mhm.
don't bog myself down in the endless amounts. Once you know enough. And then a lot of the things that I do know about, I don't really need to research on. I'll fact check them later in editing. Um, so yeah, and then I start before I'm ready. I start before I'm ready. If I know the story works, I got it. Usually I have a very good understanding of the first 50 pages of how I'm setting it up for the reader. And then I just dive in. I start 4 in the morning. I get a cup of coffee. I start my timer. When it dings at 7 o'clock, I close my computer, and then I go about my day.
Hmm.
And that's just how I do. I get a lot done that way. I get it done very quickly.
So
And then
3 hours
my
a day
editing,
is a lot. Yeah, that's good.
yeah, it's a lot. It's
You
enough
can get a
time to get
lot
into the
done.
flow before
Yeah.
anybody is awake. And so it's a good time to be quiet and focus. And that doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's not a morning person, but
Exactly.
for me, it's good. It works. I get about 2,500 words done a day on
Oh,
average, and you can get through a manuscript really quickly that way.
yes, you
I never
can.
go back. Yeah, I never go back and edit. I just keep going forward because I know that the outline works. And but I'll deviate. So like if something comes up in the story,
Right.
because I'm kind of a pantser, when I sit down for my day, I'm like, okay, there'll be like one line for what I'm writing that day. And so I'll pants the day pretty much. But as the story branches, I'll go into my outline for the next coming days, and I'll make adjustments. But I don't go
Exactly.
backwards. If I make adjustments going forward, I put notes to myself for the first
Right.
edit, because I've found that the more I go back, I start analyzing my work. And writing a book is kind of like building a house. You can't do finished work before the frame is up. Like you got to put the
Right.
frame up. After it's framed, then you got to do, you have to put the walls up. Then you got to put the sheathing up. Then you have to do all that stuff. Then the electrical and plumbing goes in. Then the flooring and the paint. Like so. You're not putting doorknobs and
Right.
trim
Exactly.
on the
Exactly.
house when it's a foundation. So you have to, I think, learn that as a writer,
Yeah.
that the sentence isn't going to be perfect. You'll do that later. And so once the story's done, now you have something to work with. I immediately go back through and fill in all the holes, problems that I know that it has, because the second you type the end, you're like, okay, this chapter 2 needs to be fixed to make this work, and I need to, so then I'll clean it up, and then once it's all cleaned up, I'll sit down and read it, and then I'll do my first kind of editorial for myself, and
Right.
then and then after that, it's just layers of edits. I do about 8 drafts before it's completely finished, and that's my process in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I typically add, though. I've never I've never had to cut, and so far, I've had three books now into like editors at Penguin, and they've never cut anything from my books. So I write really lean, like, and that goes back to my outlining process where
Yeah.
I only put a chapter in if it's absolutely necessary. So then once the story's built, you can see maybe where with pacing and stuff you need to maybe bulk
Mhm.
something up. Um, and I found that has proved to be very efficient for me.
Mhm.
So and it leads to a tighter story, I think. So
Well, I always tell writers write fast. Get that first draft
yes,
out because you can edit garbage, but you can't edit a blank page. Get the story told. This is the next Jake book. I've gone through it three
there
times
you go.
already. First, I wrote it. Then I went back and did what you did. I fleshed it out, filled out all the
Yep.
stuff. Yeah. Then I went back through it the third time where I got all the writing right, the
Yes.
feel and the flow and all of that, the rhythm of the language and all the stuff I wanted to do. Then I print it out. And I'm getting ready to
Yep.
start reading it with a pen in my hand because that's where you pick up stupid stuff. And then
Yes.
I'll go back through it one more time. That's the fifth run through, and then it's done.
Yep.
And that's kind
Yeah.
of the process. So what's next for you? Where are you going after this?
So I am never, I've gotten a lot of questions since the book came out. Like, how does it feel? You finally got published. What is it like holding your book? All this stuff. And my answer is
Yeah,
never satisfying to them. Like, my goal was not to get published. My goal was to be a writer as a career.
right,
So I'm not there yet. I still have a day
right,
job. So my foot just hit the gas the second things started happening for me. Like, I crossed the finish line and I look for the next race. So
right.
book two was turned in like 6 months early, and I went on to other projects. So like we got picked up by William Morris Endeavor when the book came out. So
Cool.
I've been doing some TV writing for them. I have some of my own projects out with them right now. One of them is a screenplay that has Ray Mendoza attached to direct right now, which is he just did Warfare and Civil War, and um,
Cool.
I just did a audio drama, an original audio drama, which is right
Uh,
now uh, kind of simultaneously out with PRH Audio and also with the editor in chief of Penguin. So um, there's a lot of different things happening. We just did a Choose Your Own Adventure book collaboration with a friend of mine, Jack Stewart, who's another Navy pilot. And that's out right now too. And then I'm working on the third one in the series right now. So I got a lot of plates up in the air because
but that's good.
you're the only one who's gonna make it happen for yourself. Nobody
Oh,
else is gonna
absolutely.
do that
Especially
for you.
with writing. Nobody can do it for you. AI be damned. No, yeah,
Yes, AI be
exactly.
damned.
Well, where can people find you and find out more about you and follow you and buy the book and all that stuff? Where can they go?
Sure, the book is out everywhere books are sold right now in all formats, audio, hardcover, and ebook. You can find me at ryanpote.com is my website. And then I'm on all the social media channels and Goodreads. All of those are the same at Ryan Pote
Cool.
Books. I'm pretty active on Instagram for the most part, but on Goodreads, there's like a book club discussion group that was started as well because there's secrets and codes that are built into this book that have yet to be revealed that unlock features and hidden passages
Ah,
on my website that take you to extra
cool.
content.
Very
Um,
cool.
tie-in stories. There's interactive computer games about There's a whole bunch of stuff that'll take everyone to book two if they really enjoyed this one. So
That's fantastic.
yeah,
Well,
and
this has
if
been
you haven't,
wonderful.
if you
Uh,
didn't know, there's an augmented reality cover. So there's a QR code on my website. You just scroll to the bottom and you can just click it. You go on your phone, click it, and then you don't have to scan it, but you can just click it and then point it at the hardcover, and you'll have a fun experience. It's interactive as well.
okay. I'm curious now. I have to do that.
Yeah,
Well, this has been wonderful, and it's just a delight. And we want to get you back
thank you.
when the next book comes out and
Absolutely, that'd be
do all this
wonderful.
again. We'll talk about that and whatever's going on then. So thanks for being here. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
A wonderful time. Um, well, that wraps up this episode. So go to Ryan's website, look at all his stuff, buy his book. You'll be delighted. And that kind of wraps up this show. And we will be back with more interviews down the road here on Get to Know. And until then, keep reading, keep writing, keep having fun. And as of course, try not to get caught.